It's 3 in the morning in a rainforest in northern Queensland, and something the size of a human hand is waiting in total darkness. She hasn't moved in hours. She doesn't need to. Above her, stretched between 2 tree branches 12 feet apart, hangs a web with a diameter wider than a manhole cover, spun from silk so strong that engineers have spent decades trying to replicate it, and so golden that early settlers swore the forest was hung with threads of real gold. She sits dead center, 8 legs splayed, waiting for the vibration that means dinner has arrived.
And then it comes. Not the frantic flutter of a moth, not the buzz of a beetle. Something heavier. Something with a heartbeat that's racing, with wings that are beating in a panic, with a voice that's calling out in alarm because it knows, with the rising horror of a creature that has just made the worst mistake of its life, that it cannot get free. A bird has just flown into her web, and she is already moving toward it. This is not a horror movie. This is Tuesday night for the golden orb-weaver spider, and it is one of the strangest, most quietly terrifying success stories in the animal kingdom.
For most of human history, we built a simple mental hierarchy of the natural world. Birds eat insects. Spiders eat insects. Birds sometimes eat spiders, snatching them out of webs as an easy snack. That's the order of things. The food chain working exactly the way a 3rd grade textbook says it should. Predators stay above prey. Birds, with their flight and their eyesight and their hollow, lightweight bones built for speed, sit comfortably above almost every insect and arachnid on the planet. Nobody told the golden orb-weaver. Scientifically, she goes by the genus name Nephila, a word borrowed from ancient Greek meaning, almost too perfectly, fond of spinning. She's found across the tropics and subtropics of the world, from the rainforests of Queensland to the woodlands of the southern United States, from Africa to Southeast Asia. There are dozens of species in her family tree, but the behavior we're talking about today shows up again and again across the group, almost as if nature kept landing on the same wild idea, independently, over and over. Females are the giants of the spider world, with bodies that can stretch past an inch, and legs that bring their total span close to 6 inches, roughly the size of an adult's outstretched palm. The males, meanwhile, are almost comically small, sometimes just 1/10 the size of the female, scurrying around the edges of her web like nervous house guests who know they've overstayed their welcome. And in a twist that sounds like dark comedy, but is simply biology, that's often exactly how their story ends. Mating for a male golden orb-weaver can come with the very real risk of becoming the next meal himself. But let's go back to the bird. In 2008, a man named Les Martin was wandering through his garden in Atherton, a small town near Cairns in tropical Australia, when he noticed something snagged in a web strung between 2 trees. He looked closer. It was a bird. Not a feather caught on silk, not a wing brushing past. A whole bird, wrapped and suspended, with a spider the size of his palm sitting beside it like it owned the place. He grabbed his camera. The photos went out to the local newspaper, then rippled across the internet, and the reaction was almost universally the same. This has to be fake. It wasn't. Arachnologists who studied the photographs confirmed what locals in bird-eating spider territory already quietly knew. This wasn't a one-off fluke, a strange accident captured by sheer bad luck on the bird's part. Cases like this have turned up again and again, in Australia, in Southeast Asia, in the southern United States. Birders and bug enthusiasts have documented golden orb-weavers feeding on sunbirds, finches, swifts, even small bats, animals that, on paper, should be nowhere near a spider's menu. So, how does an 8-legged ambush predator with no claws, no powerful jaws, and venom that's barely a footnote in the world of dangerous bites manage to bring down an animal built for flight?
The answer starts with architecture. A golden orb-weaver's web isn't just bigger than other spider webs. It's engineered differently. The silk itself is famous among material scientists for a strength-to-weight ratio that rivals steel, while remaining flexible enough to absorb tremendous impact without snapping. Researchers studying the silk have found it's tough enough that you can rest your entire forearm across the surface of a web, and the structure holds. Imagine that. A thread thinner than a human hair, woven into a net wide enough to stretch across a doorway, strong enough to support an adult's arm, and sticky enough to anchor anything that touches it. Now, imagine you're a small bird, a sunbird, say, weaving through the forest understory at dusk, chasing the last insects of the day, when the long evening light hides something that should be obvious. Golden silk, glinting between two branches, almost invisible against the gloom. You don't see the web until you're already inside it.
The impact alone would stagger most insects. But a bird has weight, has momentum, has wings that instinctively beat harder the moment they sense resistance. And that instinct, the one thing that's always saved the bird before, is exactly what dooms it now. Every flap drives feathers deeper into sticky silk. Every panicked twist tangles another wing, another foot, another claw. The web isn't rigid like a cage. It's elastic, almost alive, absorbing the bird's struggle and using that very energy to wrap the prey tighter. The same way a fishing net tightens around a thrashing catch the harder it fights. Researchers who've studied these encounters describe something almost clinical in how it unfolds. The bird doesn't get instantly devoured. It gets slowly, inexorably exhausted. The wasted spurts of escape, the rising stress, drain its energy hour by hour, until the very thing that makes birds extraordinary, their stamina, their endurance, their relentless will to survive, simply runs out. And only then does the spider make her move. This is the part that tends to unsettle people the most. The golden orb-weaver isn't lunging for a kill the second prey touches her web. She's patient. Some witnesses have described watching for what felt like an unbearably long time, as the spider simply waited, monitoring the vibrations, letting the bird wear itself down, conserving her own energy for the moment the fight finally drains out of her catch. Here's where the story gets even stranger, though, because catching a bird isn't actually the spider's intention. It's almost an accident of scale. Golden orb-weavers build these massive, fortress-strength webs because their preferred prey, large flying insects like cicadas, locusts, and wood moths, are themselves big and powerful enough to demand serious engineering. A typical golden orb-weaver web is essentially overbuilt for catching bugs, and that overbuilding is precisely what occasionally lets it catch something far bigger than any insect. The bird isn't the target. the bird is collateral damage from a spider that builds bigger and stronger than it strictly needs to, just in case. Nature rewarding extra credit homework with an unexpected jackpot. And the irony goes even deeper than that, because under normal circumstances, the relationship between birds and spiders runs in exactly the opposite direction. Birds are one of the golden orb-weaver's primary natural predators. Across the animal's range, birds routinely raid orb-weaver webs, snatching spiders right out of the silk for a quick meal. The golden orb-weaver has actually evolved defenses against this exact threat. Many species spin an additional barrier web, a looser secondary mesh in front of the main structure, specifically designed to disrupt incoming birds before they can strike at the spider sitting in the center. It's a literal early warning system, evolved over millions of years, built to stop birds from eating spiders.
So somewhere in this story, the hunted occasionally becomes the hunter, the predator becomes the prey, and the prey becomes the predator, all within the same patch of forest, sometimes within the same week. Nature rarely draws its food chains as a clean, straight line. More often, it's a circle, and sometimes the circle has a vicious sense of humor. This isn't even a recent development. In 2011, paleontologists working in Inner Mongolia, China, unearthed something extraordinary preserved in a 165-million-year-old volcanic ash, a fossil female golden orb-weaver named Nephila jurassica, dating back to the age of dinosaurs. The fossil revealed something the researchers hadn't expected. Its body measured a full inch wide, with legs stretching over 2 inches long, nearly identical in scale to the giants living in our forests today. Which means this hunting strategy, this exact body plan, this exact golden silk shimmering in prehistoric sunlight, has barely changed in over 160 million years. While dinosaurs rose and fell, while continents drifted apart, while entire branches of the evolutionary tree of life blinked in and out of existence, the golden orb-weaver kept doing exactly what it does today: building, waiting, catching whatever wandered or flew into its trap. There's something almost humbling in that. We tend to think of evolution as a constant arms race. Predators getting faster, prey getting more cautious. Everything locked in an endless cycle of improvement. But every so often, a species finds a design so effective that it simply stops needing to change. The golden orb-weaver figured out the winning formula before flowering plants had even finished conquering the earth, and it's been quietly running that same playbook ever since.
Despite the menace inherent in everything we've just described, golden orb-weavers are, by spider standards, remarkably tame toward humans. Their venom, potent enough to subdue a struggling bird, registers as little more than a mild bee sting to us, with occasional brief nausea or dizziness reported in unusual cases, but nothing close to dangerous. They're famously reluctant to bite at all, preferring to simply remain still at the center of their web rather than confront something the size of a person. In parts of Australia, locals have developed an oddly affectionate relationship with these spiders, treating them less like a household pest and more like an eccentric neighbor who occasionally does something you'd rather not witness too closely. Garden golden orb-weavers are frequently left undisturbed for years, even welcomed, while other spider species in the same yard get unceremoniously evicted. Maybe that's the strangest part of this whole story. We've spent centuries fearing spiders as the small, skittering things that should always be smaller than us, lower than us, beneath our notice on the food chain. And then this one species comes along, sitting quietly in the center of a web spun from threads stronger than steel, occasionally reminding the entire animal kingdom that size isn't really what determines who eats and who gets eaten. Patience does. Architecture does. Sometimes all it takes is building something strong enough and waiting long enough for the world to walk straight into your trap. So the next time you walk through a garden or a forest edge or anywhere golden silk catches the late afternoon light, take a second to actually look at it before you walk through. Somewhere in that web, something is waiting, and it has had 165 million years of practice.